Picture this. You've done everything right. You found the apartment, you signed the lease, you shipped your belongings halfway across the world, and you're finally standing in your new home in a foreign country feeling like you've actually pulled this off. And then 3 weeks later, a letter arrives. It's official, it has government stamps on it, and it's telling you that you owe a fine, or worse, that your right to remain in the country is now under review. All because of one step you didn't know you needed to take. This is not a scare tactic. This happens to real people, smart people, well-prepared people, every single month. And the frustrating part is that the mistake almost always comes down to the same thing. Not the visa, not the paperwork you spent months gathering. It comes down to what happens after you land. The administrative steps that nobody puts in the welcome brochure. I'm going to walk you through exactly what those steps are, why they matter more than most expats realize, and how to handle them without losing your mind or your residency status. Let's start with the piece that catches people off guard the most. Address registration. In many countries, and this applies across large parts of Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and beyond, you are legally required to register your physical address with local authorities within a specific window of time after your arrival. We're talking about going to a town hall, a municipal office, or an equivalent local government body and officially declaring where you live. This sounds straightforward until you realize that window can be as short as 8 days in some places. Other countries give you 30 days. Some give you 3 months. The problem is that most people don't find out about this requirement until after the deadline has already passed. And the penalties for missing it range from modest fines to complications with your residence permit renewal to, in certain jurisdictions, being flagged as non-compliant with immigration conditions. Here's why this particular step trips people up more than anything else. It's invisible. Your visa got you into the country. Your passport got stamped at the border. Nobody at the airport handed you a checklist saying, by the way, you have 2 weeks to go register at City Hall. The assumption from the government side is that you already know. The reality from your side is that you are focused on getting settled, getting your internet connected, and figuring out which grocery store is closest to your apartment. So here's the practical breakdown of how address registration typically works and what you need to bring with you. You'll almost always need your passport, a copy of your visa or entry stamp, and proof of your address. That proof of address is where people get stuck because if you're renting, your landlord may need to be involved. In some countries, the landlord has to accompany you or sign a document confirming you live there. In others, a signed rental contract is sufficient on its own. If you're staying somewhere temporarily, like with a friend or in a short-term rental, you may need a different type of declaration entirely. Before you go, look up the specific office you need. In many European countries, it's called something equivalent to a registry office or residence office. The name varies. The process varies. The documents vary. What doesn't vary is that showing up without the right paperwork means you leave without getting registered, and then you have to go back again, which in a foreign language with a foreign bureaucracy is significantly less fun than it sounds. Now let's talk about residence permits because this is where the stakes get significantly higher. For most non-citizens staying longer than a tourist visa allows, a residence permit is the document that legally defines your right to live, and in many cases work, in that country. Getting it involves multiple steps, often spread across different government agencies, and the timeline can be brutal if you don't start early. The common mistake here is assuming your visa approval means you're done. Your visa gets you through the door. Your residence permit is what keeps you there. In many countries, you have to apply for the residence permit separately after arriving, using that visa as the basis for the application. And this application has its own document requirements, its own fees, its own biometric appointments, and its own processing times that can stretch from weeks to months. During that processing period, your status can feel like it's in a gray zone. You've applied, you have a receipt or a confirmation, but you don't have the card yet. Understanding what you can and cannot do during this period, whether you can travel internationally, whether you can start work, whether your health coverage is active, is critical. Getting this wrong has real consequences. Here's a tactic that experienced expats use and newcomers rarely know about. Build a personal document system before you even land. Create a folder, physical or digital, that contains certified copies of everything. Your passport pages, your visa, your lease, your proof of address, your tax identification numbers if you've already obtained them, any prior government correspondence. The reason this matters is that every single appointment you'll have in the first few months will ask for some combination of these documents in a slightly different format. If you have everything organized and copied in advance, you stop losing time scrambling at the last minute. Now, let's address the language barrier because it compounds every single one of these challenges. Government websites are rarely well translated. Forms are often only available in the local language, and the staff at municipal offices may have limited patience for someone fumbling through a translation app mid-appointment. The practical solution here is not to assume you'll figure it out on the spot. Before any significant appointment, use whatever translation resources you have access to, whether that's a professional translator, a local expat community forum, or a relocation service, to understand exactly what that specific office expects from you. Show up knowing the process, not hoping to learn it when you get there. And speaking of expat communities, this is one of the most underrated resources available to you. Find the online groups for your specific destination city. The people in those groups have made every mistake already. They know which office has the shorter queue on Tuesday mornings. They know which document format is acceptable and which will get rejected. They know which requirements the official government website is outdated about. This kind of ground-level intelligence is genuinely priceless. Let me give you the mental framework that makes all of this easier to manage. Treat your first 60 days in a new country as an administrative phase, not a settling-in phase. The exploring, the socializing, the building your new life, all of that is coming. But in those first 2 months, your primary job alongside everything else is to make sure your legal foundation is solid. Address registration done. Residence permit application submitted. Tax identification number obtained if required. Local bank account if needed for payments. Health coverage confirmed. Once those pillars are in place, everything else becomes stable ground to build on. Without them, you're living on borrowed time whether you know it or not. The people who struggle most with bureaucracy abroad are the ones who approach it reactively, dealing with each requirement only after it's already urgent. The people who navigate it most successfully are the ones who approach it like a project. They research the full list of requirements before they arrive. They set calendar reminders for every deadline. They submit applications earlier than required because processing delays are real. They keep copies of every submission and every receipt. This is not about being anxious or pessimistic about your move. It's about protecting everything you've worked to build. You chose this life deliberately. You planned, you saved, you took a significant leap. A missed registration deadline or a residence permit error shouldn't be the thing that unravels it. The bureaucracy is non-negotiable, but it is absolutely navigable. You just have to know it's coming.